Hi guys, my name is Sam. I'm a dog and cat nutritionist and proud owner of a chain of independent pet shops that focuses on nutrition in the Northeast UK. Every single week, hundreds of pet parents come in and we help their problems with the power of nutrition. Today, if you have a greyhound, this video is going to be for you because we are going to be taking a look at thyme and all its varieties. So is this a good food or a bad food? We are going to look at all the nutritional aspects of the food, and then at the end of the video I will be giving you my verdict and what I think about it. Now let's start with Thyme Greyhound 20, which they say is a complete diet for resting greyhounds and can be included as part of a home mix for dogs. Thyme Greyhound 20 has a mixed formulation guaranteeing consistency in every bag. So my recommendation to you would be for you to look at the ingredients for everything you give your dog, because manufacturers cannot lie on the list of ingredients, just like cereal boxes cannot lie on the back and how much sugar it contains. It's absolutely the same in pet food. So I always recommend you look at the ingredients for everything you give your dog, because marketing is marketing after all on the front of every packet. Now, the ingredients for Thyme Greyhound 20 are: the first ingredient is cereals, the second ingredient is meat and animal derivatives, the third ingredient is derivatives of vegetable origin, and then we have oils and fats and minerals. So cereals is the first ingredient, and we like, or we prefer, dog foods to contain meat as the first ingredient, to be listed as the first ingredient, because we want to be paying for meat. We want to be paying for meat in the supermarket, in the restaurant, and in pet food as well. We don't want to be paying for cereals or rice, wheat, barley, corn, etc, etc. So here the first ingredient is cereals. Cereals constitutes very, very little in terms of nutritional value for dogs. Dogs don't secrete the right enzymes in their mouth to break down cereals, and obviously cereals isn't very nutritious, and sometimes a lot of dogs find grains hard to digest. This is why we do not like cereals in pet food, let alone the first ingredient. The second ingredient is meat and animal derivatives, and I want to draw your attention to how unspecific this is. It doesn't say Scottish salmon, it doesn't say fresh chicken, it doesn't say dry duck, it doesn't say dehydrated sardines. What it says is meat and animal derivatives. Which meat and which animal derivatives, we don't know, because they don't tell you. That means that the manufacturer isn't tied down to a specific formula, so they can vary from chicken to beef to pork to salmon to whatever is available and not tell you. And one of the things we like in pet food is traceability. So for example, if you have a dog with a chicken allergy and we give the dog fresh chicken, and we see that's fresh chicken on the bag, we will be able to be right, we aren't going to give the dog that. But if we give the dog meat and animal derivatives, that batch might contain chicken, and if your greyhound is allergic or reactive, or in any shape or form reactive to chicken, then that's not going to be good for your greyhound. So meat and animal derivatives is very unspecific. And then we have derivatives of vegetable origin and oils and fats. Then again, what oils and what fats? Where do those fats come from? Do they come from chicken? Is it chicken fat? Is it beef fat? Is it pork fat? We don't know. They don't tell you. And that's not something we like. Now, we have 20% crude protein, which is low in terms of protein. You want to be paying for more protein coming from animal sources. It comes from the 3 essential amino acids and protein, especially if you have a greyhound, which is an athlete. Athletes need protein, and 20% protein is very, very low. So you are giving the dog a bunch of cereals, a bunch of unspecific meat and animal derivatives, and a bunch of unspecific derivatives of vegetable origin, oils and fats. And by the way, if you are curious and want to learn more about nutrition, I highly encourage you to download our free guide, How to Feed Your Dog Better. You can find the link down below. The second recipe we are going to take a look at is time, maintenance, and retired. So if you have a retired greyhound, this food might be suitable for them. Now, this is again a complete dog food containing all the nutrients required for resting or retired greyhounds. And there's so many greyhounds that get adopted by kind people, maybe like yourself, that were treated poorly or just out of racing circuits, and more power to you. The composition here is very, very similar to the other one. We have cereals, we have meat and animal derivatives, we have derivatives of vegetable origin, and oils and fats. So cereals, meat and animal derivatives, we have the same sort of ingredients, and we have the same poor quality ingredients. The first ingredient is cereals. We don't like cereals in pet food. Cereals are grains. They don't get much absorption and nutrients from those cereals. They don't have the right enzymes to break down all the cereals. We then have meat and animal derivatives, and this is, again, if you have a retired greyhound or a senior dog, you want to be going for the lean meats. Just as my granddad, for example, can digest red meats very well, or lamb, for example, because that's very nutrient rich. We want to be feeding our greyhounds the same way as senior people, with lean meats, easy digestible protein, easily digestible nutrients and minerals, and everything they need. So meat and animal derivatives, again, we don't know whether that's chicken, it's pork, it's beef, it's quail, it's kangaroo. We have no idea. We then have derivatives of vegetable origin, oils and fats, minerals. The crude protein is 19.5, which is even lower than the previous one. We have oils and fats at 8.5%, fiber at 3%, and ash at 8%. So again, we are giving our dogs a very carb heavy food, and it contains cereals and meat and animal derivatives. Again, now, if you have a retired greyhound, the most important macronutrient is protein. Protein coming from animal sources. Animal sources are very high in leucine, for example, which is one of the 3 essential amino acids and very, very important in protein muscle synthesis. So it is important that the food you give your greyhound is good quality. Now, this is not a food I would recommend for a retired greyhound. Why? Cereals, hard to digest. Meat and animal derivatives, again, if I had a greyhound, I would want traceability. So I want to know that I'm giving my dog fresh chicken or raw turkey or pork or whatever the case might be, but I want traceability. Same with oils and fats. So this is not a food I would recommend for any senior dog, let alone retired greyhounds. Now, a lot of you will be watching this and you will be saying to me, well, I have been feeding my greyhounds this food forever and my greyhounds are fine. This is a bit like saying I've been eating junk food my whole life and I'm fine and I've been thriving. Yeah, very well, you have a bulletproof stomach, but that's not the right way to feed a human being, and this is the same with dogs. Don't take it personally and recognize that the ingredients is all that matters in pet food. Let's look at Time Greyhound 28, which is a dog food for racing and active greyhounds with a fixed formulation guaranteeing consistency for optimum performance. So the first ingredient, once again, is cereals. The second one is meat and animal derivatives, and then we have derivatives of vegetable origin. 4% is sugar beet pulp, and then fructooligosaccharides, which is an undigestible carbohydrate source coming from sugar. We then have oils and fats, etc., etc. The crude protein is higher, which is 28%. Crude oils and fats 13%, fiber 2.5%. So we have a higher protein content, which is always good because we want to be paying for protein. The oils and fats percentage is higher, which is good because your dog is going to be using a lot more fat resources and they are going to have to be replenished, and so that's good at 13%, although it's not overly high. And then we have all the bits and bobs. The thing I don't like about this food is the same thing I didn't like about the food in the other 2 or 3 formulations. Cereals, not a very good ingredient. Meat and animal derivatives lacks traceability, and derivatives of vegetable origin, we don't know anything apart from the 4% sugar beet and 0.15% fructooligosaccharides. And then we have oils and fats. So if I had an active greyhound, I would want to feed my greyhound high meat, low carbohydrate, good quality protein and low carbohydrate. That's what I would want to feed my dog. I would want to feed my dog 80% meat at least and 20% carbohydrates. And you can do a lot more research on the channel on what to feed active dogs and what to look out for in good foods. Good foods tend to be very, very high in protein, low in carbohydrates, in low glycemic carbohydrates. The most important amino acid, once again, is protein, especially if you have an athlete such a greyhound. If you have a greyhound, you will need a very high protein content and very low carbohydrate profile. Greyhounds and other dogs make their own blood sugar, their own energy from protein and fat in a process called gluconeogenesis. So they have the ability to convert protein and fat into glucose, into energy. So they do not need cereals, they don't need rice, they don't need Yorkshire puddings, they don't need bread and all these nonsensical ingredients. What they want, what they need is high quality protein, high quality fats, and very good quality greens or low glycemic carbohydrates. That will be the better food for a racing greyhound if you have one. If you have a greyhound, you want to be feeding them like an athlete. You don't want to be feeding them cereals and meat and animal derivatives. Yes, Usain Bolt ate chicken nuggets before breaking records, but that's not the norm for the millions of athletes all around the world. So the fact that you think you can get away with giving the dog cereals and meat and animal derivatives, that is not optimum nutrition for a greyhound. The next one I am going to look at is the puppy. And the time puppy is a complete dog food for greyhound and whippet pups and their mothers. Now, the first ingredient is dried chicken and turkey, which is good. Yes, I like it. 26%. We then go into rice, which is 21%. Now, rice expands when you cook it. So if you're making a curry at home and you put a little bit of rice, that rice is going to double or triple sometimes. So that rice is going to be more than 21%. We then have whole grain maize, which is not an ingredient I like. Poultry fat, which is very unspecific. We have oats, we have maize gluten meal, we have sugar beet pulp, salmon meal, which is good, chicken gravy, which is good, dried whole eggs, which is good, salmon oil, which is good, brewer's yeast, which is a probiotic, etc., etc. So this food has a much better nutrient profile and ingredients than the others, and I'm not really sure why. Now, dried chicken and turkey, 26%, that's really good. Again, traceability. We want to know what I'm giving my dog. And the first ingredient here is a meat source. Now, I don't like rice and I don't like whole grain maize, poultry fat, oats, and maize gluten meal. Those are 4 ingredients I do not like. I don't like rice, wheat, barley, corn, soy. All these ingredients I am not a fan of. Maybe a tiny bit of oats, it's okay. It can be a source of fiber, but in very, very small quantities. And then we have chicken gravy, which is good, salmon meal, which is good, and dried whole eggs, albeit the proportion is very, very low here. The crude protein is 29%, which is something close to what we would want to be feeding a dog. And then we have 17% oils and fats, which is a high percentage of fat, which is what puppies need and mothers need when they are sort of exerting themselves. So this is a better food than the others. This is not a food, again, I would want for a puppy or for a mum. I don't like maize, I don't like poultry fat, I'm not a fan of oats or maize gluten meal, but I do like the dried chicken and turkey. Now, arguably, if you are a fan of this food, I would feed this one to everyone. I would feed this food to active, to retired, and arguably, this is the best food of the bunch because the first ingredient is dried chicken and turkey, and that's 26%, and the crude protein is 29%, which is on the upper echelon of this range, although you can get much higher protein foods. Now, all in all, this food is very cheap. You can get a big sack of 15 kilos for like 20-25 quid. And what do you want? You're not going to get something extremely good quality for a big sack for 20-25 quid or whatever the price might be. So this is all in all a very specific food that is catered to greyhounds, which is a bit of a nonsense because most dogs need to be fed high quality foods. Most dogs need to be fed a very good quality diet, whether they are racing or they're not racing, or they are a particular breed or they aren't a particular breed. Unless your dog is doing something very specific, such as, yes, racing, or they have diabetes or pancreatitis or a very specific health issue, they need to be fed the same. If you have a very active greyhound, you should be feeding and fueling them properly with good quality amino acids, good quality protein, maybe good quality carbohydrates of the low glycemic index, and very good quality source of fats. But this is not a food I would recommend for greyhounds. This is not a food we would ever sell. We would never sell something like this. We don't like brands that don't go into the traceability of the whole thing, and this is not a food I would recommend. Wheat, barley, corn, soy, meat and animal derivatives, cereals, rice, those are ingredients we don't like in pet food, and you are much better off going for a better food, for an 80-20, especially if you have a greyhound and they're active, or they are a puppy and you are thinking about raising them. You should really dial down your knowledge about nutrition, what to feed, what not to feed, the three main macronutrients, proteins, carbohydrates, and fats, and the different sources for the different macronutrients, the different amino acid profiles, etc. And if you want to learn more, this channel is for you, and I highly encourage you to watch this video next, because I go a lot more in depth about what the right food is for a dog.